What's up, folks? Welcome back to the stream. It is, as seems to happen every week, Monday. We are indulging in a little bit of mayhem. Today, let's talk about some lists from the majors of the weekend. Not a huge number of events to cover. A lot of the focus of the weekend is on the ITT International Team Tournament, as well as the WTC, of course, coming up later this week. We've got War Master starting this week, WTC coming this weekend. It's just a week full of insane Warhammer 40k lists, and also, of course, insane drama, which we will have to talk about. There is, in fact, multiple pieces of drama. Today we're going to talk about a list thing, largely because I talked about this list on my video this morning, and the player who ran it has subsequently been disqualified, probably been red carded. I bet they lost their golden ticket. It's a whole thing. So that was within the last, checks notes, about 4 hours, I guess. We also had, of course, reports of fighting at Warhammer 40k events. What the fuck is happening? I think what we'll do today, chat, is I'm probably going to cover some of these explicit things. I have done a little bit of digging into them, and we'll probably go over to Twitch to talk about that explicitly, because then I can turn it into its own video and stuff. So that's what we'll do. We did one recently. We did a little Twitch deep dive stream on the WTC ruling drama that happened a couple weeks ago. We'll probably do a similar thing later this afternoon over on the Purple channel. So come hang out with me over there. I also want to discuss momentarily, of course, they have another stream on my schedule from yesterday. Unfortunately, that one did have to get canceled. One of the players from T5 SU Invitational had some medical issues. One of their family members, I should say, had medical problems. They had to go to the hospital. It's a whole deal. I don't know where their status right now is. Obviously, everybody sent positive vibes. But that, unfortunately, I think meant that Majunior has to drop out of the competition. It sucks. It does happen. It's a tough situation, and I hope everything resolves okay. But that is why I was not live yesterday, unfortunately. In any case, let's talk about what happened over the weekend. So let's talk about this event in particular. The first one that I discussed on my video this morning. This was the Iowog Moose-tacular. Is the event. Is an 83-player event, almost a major. Ran 6 rounds. I think once you crest 100 players, you're a major. This weekend was a little bit light on events, so you could kind of call it major level. Of course, those distinctions are not, set in stone. They're kind of arbitrary, but one of the larger events of the weekend, 83 players, run over in Cedar Rapids. As I discussed, one Charlie Andre went 6-0, won the event. Pretty cool. And I talked about his list, which I thought was fucking neat. Chat. It was a Biosecting Breed Surge Heroes of the Uprising combination, a little bit different than we typically see from Genestealer Cults. And I was like, neat. Heroes of the Uprising is one of the most flavorful detachments in the game. I was really excited when it got dropped because I thought it made for really interesting list compositions. Not a lot of people played it. I think we saw one person play with Outlander Claw. But that was about it. Until this, I was like, oh my god, 6-0 with a Genestealer Cults. What a time to be alive. When I was going through the list, I did not grok, chat, that he does have on his roster one Locus. Pull that little man's data sheet up. This is their little bodyguard guy. Kind of an interesting guy. I didn't know what this guy did for ages because he was unplayably bad, but I think in 11th edition he's not too bad. He's basically he's the mob enforcer for the Primuses, essentially. He gives them a feel no pain when he's inside the same unit. He gives fight first to the unit, so they're a little bit better in melee. He himself is kind of awesome in melee as well. He's essentially a Space Marine lieutenant in combat. He's 5/2/2 with 5 attacks, pretty good. In this attachment, he gets reroll once to hit and wound. I was like, wow. For 35 points, what a steal. He has Deep Strike. You can use him as a utility unit. You can just drop him into little places. He's 132 mil base, I think. So he just drops into random little spots. He's pretty good at contesting utility units on objectives. The chances he kills 4 plus save infantry, Space Marine Scout equivalents, with reroll ones to hit and wound is pretty high. So you like drop this guy in, you rapid ingress him or something. He stands inside a hidden terrain feature behind a train, inside a hidden position or behind a terrain feature, so you can't see him because he's really small. He runs out. He like stabs 4 Space Marine scouts to death, takes their objectives. Man, this guy seems great. Why doesn't anyone play him? Chat. Could it possibly be that he is a support character? Which I did not note when I was breaking the list down. So, unfortunately, we did submit a list with a locus unattached to a unit. You could say, is it a mistake and he forgot to click attach to a unit? Well, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the locus's attachment rules are really restrictive, like super duper restrictive. He can only attach to hybrid metamorphs, acolyte hybrids with auto pistols, hand flamers, and neophyte hybrids. Unfortunately for us, chats, the biophagus that is on most of these units, because this is Biosanctic Brood Surge, you need biophagi to gain the benefits of the detachment ability inside this detachment, because it affects your biophagus units. They are also supports. You cannot dual attach to support characters. So either, and there are no other units in the list that this guy is able to attach to. There's one Acolyte Hybrid Auto Pistol Squad already has a Biophagus. 2 Hybrid Metamorph Squads already have Biophaguses. The rest of the attachable units are Pure Strange Gene Stealers, which can only be joined by Patriarchs. One of them already has a Patriarch joined to it. So there's nowhere for this guy to go. So there's 2 options, of course. The first one being that we didn't realize he was a support character. The second one being that we did realize he was a support character, didn't realize he could not dual attach alongside a Biophagus. Either one of them, extremely embarrassing. Now, that wasn't the only issue with the list. There were some other problems. The first one being that the Achilles Ridge Runners somehow did not get their flare launchers replaced by Survey Augers. The flare launcher is basically like never a thing on that you take, really. It gives you smoke, and you can use smoke for free, but like smoke is stupid and bad, so who cares? You're always gonna take one of the support effects. So either the Survey Auger to give ranged attackers that you have ignore cover, or the Spotter so that it's more reliable that you hit with your crossfire, with your mortar shots to trigger crossfire. And in War Gear options, you replace the flare launcher with one of the support things. Somehow they didn't get replaced on the list. I don't know if they play that way, but it's like super weird. There's also an issue with the hybrid metamorphs. The hybrid metamorphs took a hand flamer on their cult icon guy, but the metamorph datasheet says that they replace their hand flamer with a cult icon. So it's like a bunch of little things. The big one is the inclusion of this additional character. So like here's the hybrid metamorph datasheet. You replace the auto pistol with a cult icon, which means you do not have an auto pistol to replace with a hand flamer. So somehow we ended up being able to take 10 hand flamer metamorphs that also had an icon, where realistically there should only be 9. It's like a bunch of little stuff. I think, obviously, like the War Gear stuff can be kind of complex, and sometimes you hit the wrong buttons in the list builder. The Locust is really the big one. This does seem like a good unit for 35 points. I would play one. Bro, I play Tyranids and we get, for whatever, 25 points or something, we get a fucking Ripper Swarm. 10 points more and I get a dude who hits like a Space Marine character. Sign me the fuck up. That seems great. I think he is only cheap because he is a support character. We didn't realize it. Now, obviously, I have a bit of an inflammatory title for the live stream here. This is, like, list mistakes like this. I think that there's, like, a level of malice that you have to be assigned in order to, like, necessarily be cheating. This feels like it's probably a mistake. I don't know, really. The big thing is that, of course, if you were to cheat, why would you just write it down, right? It's the issue. If we wanted to, if we were going to maliciously, like, play with incorrect weapon loadouts and equipment loadouts and stuff, you wouldn't put it in your list, probably. And then, like, if somebody goes to a judge later, it's suddenly like it's all hearsay or whatever. There is, of course, no chance that if your plan is to do well at a tournament, no one will read your list and notice the issues. I missed it, of course, but the rest of, especially the GCL Call It community, absolutely did not. So I don't know if there's necessarily malice here, but it definitely is gratuitous incompetence. And for sure, the result, I think, is valid. Charlie Entree over here ended up having his score zeroed. He was 6-0. He is now has 0 battle points. His opponents have all been given 100-point wins, which means the event went from 1 undefeated at 6-0 to having 2 undefeated. Basically, he beat, I believe it was Space Wolves in the semis and then Deathwatch in the finals. Both of those players went to win their other games, but if those results had been reversed, they obviously could have been placed more highly. So I don't know where the event's golden ticket goes or exactly what happens to that. I don't know if the GCL Cult player, of course, will be allowed back to this circuit. I did reach out to the TOs to see what was going on, but I didn't receive any response. But that is generally what's happening. And so now we get to talk about the players who probably should have been towards the top here. It did seem like the games that the results they had posted were not like blowouts or anything. They were probably very competitive games. I do think that the inclusion of a extra unit essentially inside the GCR Cult army probably can certainly sway a very close game, especially in 11th edition where the games do tend to be very close in terms of score. Obviously that's pretty reasonable, I think, to flip that around. The mistakes seem more sloppy than malicious. I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, this is the similar situation to the thing we talked about a couple weeks ago, where we had a player who submitted a list that looked like it had a bunch of extra units in it, but it was just an error on the app's part, and he didn't go back and read through his list to double check it. This feels like a thing where this player like put all the points together and was like, sick, here's my list. I didn't notice that there's like a bunch of errors popping up in the list export. So, it is what it is. The weird thing, and I think I'll push back a little bit. I don't know where the list actually came from here. It's just like a raw text export, of course. So we don't know exactly where he made it. I think that a lot of these issues would be forestalled if there was, like a compliance check that also got included in the list. Like when you click copy list, this is the export from the Games Workshop app, but there are other army builders that, of course, will ape the same export style. So I don't know necessarily if this is from the GW app. The reason that that's relevant is that the Games Workshop app will give you a bunch of like little like exclamation points at the bottom if there are errors, and if you ignore those, then I don't know, you're just a moron, I guess. But it would be cool if you exported with that at that state, it would just like put a list of like errors at the top or something, didn't select Warlord, incorrect unit weapon selections or whatever, like a support character has no attached unit, that kind of stuff. If at that point you click paste and then click submit without looking at that section that's at the top of the list, what the fuck are you doing? If you do look at it and you delete it or you ignore it or something, of course, now like suddenly it is much more deliberate than that. But I think it is, if you aren't paying attention and you're rushing or something, it is potentially possible, I guess, to miss that stuff. Although you should obviously double check your list and remember that your what's the word? Your characters have their keywords or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, chat. Hard part is that when the mistakes exist and the person goes 6-0, how do they know to play the game so well but not build a list? Yeah, I mean, some of it is of course going to be new edition syndrome. The edition's only been out for like a month and a half. We don't know necessarily exactly how how much experience these players have, especially with a bit of a non-standard faction like Gene Stealer Cults. It is a bad look though. I certainly I support the event's decision to just 06 him and to 06 then 86. You know what I'm saying, chat? So it is what it is. I do think that we do have like a penchant as a community to like witch hunt these people for list errors. But like I said before, I don't necessarily think that that's I don't think that's necessary. I think on-table misplays are like so much more egregious because, again, it seems so like it's so much more difficult to level an accusation of intentional misplay if someone has presented an incorrect list to you publicly, right? Like, if someone's goal was to cheat you, why would they tell everyone they're doing that? If someone's doing something skullduggerous on the table, I think that's where we start to get, our torches and pitchforks out or whatever. In this case, I think we just, we kick the player from the tournament, we zero their scores, and then we move on, which I think is fair. So anyway, chat, that's what I think. Maybe judges do a double check at some point. Yeah, I think like top table double checking definitely makes sense. It is like tough on the day, especially when you have 100 players. Warhammer 40k events are not well staffed. A lot of times, like, events will ask players to like double check their opponent's list beforehand, and sometimes when these like situations arrive, so we do see this rash of events allotting like 15 minutes at the start of the game where it's like, build your opponent's army in the 40k app and see if you can, and if you can't, then report them to a judge or something like that. I don't know. That it does, like, it's difficult to do that in any way that doesn't put onus on like a lot of other people. I wish that there was an easier way for judges to be able to do that. I do wonder if in the future this like technology can resolve this issue, where maybe we just have a direct, like, I know that there's a link up between not only the Games Workshop app, but also like the GW app and other instances of the GW app. You can link with your opponent to see their list. You can also link it directly to BCP. I wonder if there's like a solution in the future where you link to BCP and it immediately like stars your profile with an error that your list has outstanding errors without having to go through this text export thing. Because obviously text export's imperfect, it's manipulable, it's whatever. And that would like alleviate a lot of that pressure, but we'll see. So many characters not attached. Yeah, and like characters not attaching, that's definitely a new edition thing, especially because the process is annoying. It's just like, click on the character, click on the unit, scroll back to the character, click attach, scroll down to the unit, click attach again. You're like, if I'm playing a list that has 7 characters in it, and I have to do that, I have to make like 28 specific actions to attach them all correctly. Whereas that's a new thing in this edition. We haven't had to do that previously at all. Forgetting to attach characters definitely makes sense. Of course, you need to do it though. Like, we can complain that it's annoying as much as we want, but that does become at some point like a UI design thing on the list constructor side. There's also other ways to do it. You can add all your characters together and then just write at the top where they're attached. If you want to be super lazy about it, you don't have to go through, like, you could just write down. It just needs to be indicated to your opponent where the attachments are. Just be like, all my lieutenants are in my intercessor squads, and my Terminator captains with my Terminators. Cool. The problem in this case, of course, is that we had a character that couldn't attach. And the extra problem is that it wasn't only a character that couldn't attach, it was a character that couldn't attach and made the list illegal for not attaching, right? In some cases, you can rock up to a game, your opponent goes, brother, you have not attached any of your characters, what the fuck is up with that? And suddenly you're like, well, it's up to the judge, I guess, now. Maybe I have no attached characters. Maybe they'll let me go back and, take a points cut or whatever in order to reattach them. However, support characters cannot begin the game unattached, and he had no legal place to put that support character. So it immediately renders the list illegal. That's the crux of the issue. If you had a character you forgot to attach, and he just vibes, and he's by himself, he's just a unit now, right? He just works like a normal unit. But support units must be attached. That's just the rule. And I believe, if I can find it in the Muster Armies section, let me see if I can pull it up. I believe that it's not even like a case of dedicated transports where they destroy themselves before the game, for example. It simply makes the list unable to progress past the Muster Army step. Right. So, like, if we look at the actual rule here, right? A support units must be attached to a bodyguard unit when you go through and complete 2504. So this isn't the case where I can unintentionally add a support unit to an army. However, like an old school company hero squad, or like what were some of the other units like that, where if you didn't attach them, they would just kill themselves. I can't remember off the top of my head. There are a couple of them where, like, if you didn't put a character in the unit, or the character didn't go into a unit, they would just like commit seppuku before the game began. That doesn't work this way. You simply have an illegal list, so you shouldn't have gotten to the table at all with that unit in play. Realistically, like, you should just play for it 35 points down. Otherwise, you can't play at all. The Cybernetic Data Smith. That's a good one. Yeah. That's a good one for sure. Although he's just support now, right? And that's a lot of that is little support stuff. Anyway, chat. I do like the support mechanic better. It does, like, give this, like, it's cleaner than, like, you kill yourself before the game starts. But on the flip side, it does open this mistake where it's like, there's now no recourse if you haven't done this thing. Like, we have seen people in the past be like, I submitted a Rhino and forgot to include any Firstborn in my army. So I have a Rhino in my army that no one can embark into, and it explodes at the start of the game every time. We had a guy on stream do that one time. He was like, I'll put all these Hellblasters in my Rhino. And we were like, oh boy, you can't do that. Those Hellblasters are not, they're Tacticus, my guy. They're not Firstborn, so they can't go in. And you look around at the rest of the list and everything's Tacticus. And we're like, I don't know what to do here. And the judges were like, you have a Rhino that kills itself. In this case, you don't even get to that step, which is like the crux of the issue. Anyway, let's talk about some freaking other lists. Let's talk about some lists that were cool and correctly submitted. If one of the Biophaguses was with the Abominant and the Locust Circuit Spice, it would have been fine. That's true. Yeah, you could swap stuff around, but of course, like, we didn't do that. And it does dramatically change the list if you do that, because the Aberrants in Biosanctic Brood Surge already get the detachment abilities. However, Metamorphs don't unless they have a Biophagus. So it massively depowers one of your units. If you are gonna make that swap. I think you might prefer to play 35 points down, to be perfectly honest. So it is what it is. If it's an illegal support character, your opponent should get it. Listen, we're playing 40k on hard mode. I've included 17 Space Marine Lieutenants to give to my opponent. Can I win? It's Warhammer 40k, like, fists only deathless, you know? Good stuff. Why obsessively reread over your list? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what you should do, right? That's what you should do. So many of these, like, you know, it's like a pocket helper situation where you can submit your army all you want, but you do have to, before the game, go, this unit's this and that unit's that. And if you don't do that, you get run out of the community at the end of a super major. Woo boy. Give the enemy 1 million characters, run a clock, time them out. Give them 1 million characters, drop fixed assassination. Listen, half of my army are characters and rhinos. I can't embark in the rhinos, and I can't attach the characters. They go to you. I'll take assassination, bring it down. Thank you very much. Incredible, dude. That's so funny. Razorback is not legal in Space Wolves. Still in the app. Can Space Wolves take Devastators? I can never remember what sub-factions can take what. Do they have legitimately no Firstborn options? That would surprise me. I guess... Actually, yeah, I guess we could look. They have Desolators, drop-ons. Interesting. Did they just got rid of, like, Long Fangs entirely? The concept of Long Fangs is gone? That is interesting. And they do have the Rhino in here, right? So they can't take Tacticals because that gets replaced by Grey Hunters, right? R.I.P. But they can take a Rhino. That's fascinating, chat. I did not know that. Is that actually true? Wait, what about scouts? Wait, can scouts go in rhinos? Somebody fact check me. Let's look it up. We're going to get to the bottom of this. This is important. Nothing has been more important than this. You can transport... Oh, I think we found a winner. You cannot transport Jump Pack, Wolfen, Phobos, Gravis, Centurion, Terminator, Tacticus. We did it! We can transport scouts. See, it's fine. Everything is fine. And Space Wolves do have scouts. I'm looking at it right now. When do we treat Divergent Space Marines like cult legions? Pretty close. We're getting there. They have their own entries into Munitorum, which I think is I don't know. It's a good direction to be, I think. It does like make it a little bit cleaner than the like weird situation that we had where they would print like 7 datasheets for the Defiler that all had different abilities and were like different power levels. I do like that it's still one datasheet, but they just have different points cost and sometimes unit sizes. That's a little bit cleaner than it was previously, but I do think that we're on track to have individual Space Marine chapters just be basically their own factions. Speaking of which, that's a good transition to talk about some Space Wolves, because Space Wolves did end up winning the event because of this change. Alex Murphy over here played the classic combination of Legends of Saga and Song, and Saga of the pretty okay Wolfie boy. We've been seeing this list do quite a bit of work over the last couple of weeks. It takes a lot of Wolfguard Terminators. Pretty cool. So Saga of the Great Wolf, of course, is Logan's detachment. It gives them like combat doctrines and that gives them bonuses in different phases. And then, of course, they can reuse one of those once per game if they have Logan on the battlefield. Legends of Saga and Song gives you +1 to charge on your Terminator units. In addition to that, you also get Fierce Example, which is +1 toughness. So you can make toughness 6 with this Wolfguard Terminators with a situational -1 to be wounded if the strength characteristic of an incoming attack is greater than their toughness. That is pretty good. So we just take 3 of those. They're just massively beefy. There's a million of them everywhere, and they rock up the table, and your opponent's like, what do I do about this? And then you're like, I don't know, maybe explode or something. And then they're like, fair enough, you got me. So it's 1, 2, 3 bricks of 10. All of them have 7 storm shields, 2 assault cannons, which actually, like, they put out a not unreasonable damage, especially because you can get a +1 to hit on ranged attacks. So if your army's built for like a little bit of shooting, the assault cannons can put in like a little bit of sort of anti-infantry work, a little bit of you can kill some screens and stuff like that, plus just a bunch of storm shields, so that we do have all of those forward profiles. Excuse me. We have a Grimnar's Mark on a Terminator Captain, so he can join into the Terminator unit. We have Argent Rockfist in another Terminator unit. We have Beyonders, the Fell-Handed, for some additional command points. An Intercessor Jump Pack squad, a Land Raider Redeemer, Outriders, and a Scout squad. I don't even know if the Land Raider Redeemer carries anything. Probably doesn't. It might carry, interestingly, the Jump Pack Intercessors, because that does give you a safe place to put them on the line, and then you can kind of like push them across the battlefield early. Really fast, because you get the disembarkation move in addition to their normal movement. If you don't need them against like opposite specific objective or something, that's oftentimes a place you can drop them in. Space Marine Interceptors or Inceptors got packed. That's good. Yeah, that was weird that like some units some factions could take different unit sizes. It did feel strange, but it was what it was. Ulrich the Slayer can go into rhinos. Oh, that's true. That means weirdly not Primaris. I misplayed a game one time because I didn't realize, even though he can attach into like every Tacticus unit in existence, he himself is not Tacticus. And there's no cutout. The Rhino has a cutout for Tacticus characters attaching to firstborn units, but the Impulsor doesn't. So Ulrich can't sit in an Impulsor. And I think I played a game where I had him in a Wolfguard brick or something. I can't remember what it was. And I had him in an Impulsor. And then I was like a game. And I was like, oh, fuck. I can't do this. This guy's not fucking Tacticus. So stupid. Space Wolf keywording is like kind of a nightmare. It's almost as bad as Astra Militarum, but not quite as bad. The Grimnar's Mark Captain can't be attached to a fierce example of Terminators because that's 2 enhancements. I don't know if that's true. I'm gonna level. They didn't put fierce example on his Terminators. I'm gonna level though. I have no fucking idea if that's true or not. It was extremely clear that you could only ever have 1 enhancement and no enhanced unit could have an epic hero, and then they just changed a bunch of that shit. And I'm going to level. I do not know what the rule is now. I assume you can do it, but I have no idea. So, who knows? You can ally in agents and reload the Rhino as an agent Rhino. Oh, if you just play it as a different data sheet, yeah, you could do that. But in any case, we didn't take the second upgrade on that guy. The FAQ says no. Well, that might be true. We could spend time looking at it, but I'll just take your word for it. It was kind of obnoxious because it was like every single event in their mom rolled one way, and then they were just like, nah, we're going to change it. And you're like, okay, well, I have no idea what the fucking rule is anymore. So it is what it is. With that, we can hop on over to the second place finishing list. That is Deathwatch. Tim Royers over here did get... he played in the finals, lost in the finals, ended up getting that score reversed, of course, and is playing a Black Spear Task Force. The classic Deathwatch composition. Running a Gravis Captain with Tome of the Ectoclades, an Indomitor kill team, a pair of Decimus kill teams. I also have to look up what these fucking things are. These are just Deathwatch veterans with extra steps, right? They just have the same ability. Yeah. Fascinating. So it's just rerolls against non-Chaos or Imperium stuff. They do have T6 guys, but you use T4 because of the Deathwatch like special rules that make their units worse. It's pretty cool to have an army ability that makes your army worse. It explicitly overrides the core rules for determining unit toughness. We love that. And then in this case, we're running... Let's see if I can... This is like getting cut off. I don't know why. There we go. That's a little bit better. In this case, we're running... 1 Plasma Gun, 1 Heavy Thunder Hammer, Deathwatch Marksman Bolt Carbine, Special Issue Pistol, and 1 Infernus Heavy Bolter. So you do get a 3 damage melee weapon out of it, in addition to some heavy weapons. The points value is only 100, so they're sort of like... They're base OC2, I assume. Yeah, so they're effectively like pretty efficient utility units that put out some pretty solid shooting, in addition to having decent melee. Especially because we get a power weapon on the Sergeant as well. So we have 2 kind of close combat dudes and 2 heavy weapon guys. So as little infantry sweepers, I guess they do probably beat out Deathwatch veterans, I guess, for the utility of their heavy weapons, maybe. I don't know. We have a Deathwatch Terminator squad, just a 5-man that's taking Cyclone missiles and Storm Shields. The standard loadout. These guys, usually you use them to kind of like instigate. So you drop them in the front somewhere to fight for utility units and like try to take your opponent's expansion objective. And you basically want to incentivize your opponent to come out and fight you. Because what you don't want to do is have your opponent just simply like hide behind their ruin terrain features all day and call it good, because you want to be able to like doom drop them. Deathwatch live and die on just the drop, like just dumping everyone into the center of the battlefield and calling it good. So the Deathwatch Terminators are oftentimes just a unit that can kind of like bulwark the middle, and they can trade down in a lot of cases, but because they're so annoying to kill, they require such an overcommittal in response to actually kill them that your opponent has to expose valuable stuff that you can kill with Indomitor kill teams. We then have Indomitor kill team with 3 aggressors, 3 eradicators, and then just heavy bolt rifle guys, normal stuff. 1 infiltrator squad. Interestingly, a Spectrus kill team. That's kind of fascinating. The Spectrus is like pretty cool because they can get instigator carbines. They do. It's basically a like massively expensive scout squad, but of course that they are more combat effective. They're both infiltrate and scout. Of course, those 2 things don't work as well anymore, so it's not quite as cool as it was. But they do uppy downy for free. So alongside the rest of the army, we can site-to-site teleport 2 things for free if we target one of the captain's units with it. Then these guys also pop up, and they can basically follow around the rest of the team. The other thing, too, is if we are playing an instigator, which we are, the instigator bolt carbine gives you a normal move after shooting, so they're kind of difficult to deal with. They can like stand behind terrain and walk in and shoot 2 las fusils and then a bunch of like random bolter shots and then rock back and then redeploy themselves into an annoying position if they need to. Unfortunately, they did lose the ability to up, down, come out of reserve, shoot, and then move, which allowed them to take objectives. You can't move after coming out of reserve anymore until the charge phase. So it's a little bit weird. However, it's probably not the end of the world, I guess. Although, like, nowadays you can, in a lot of cases, just strat reserve onto side objectives anyway, which is not really something you could do in most deployments in 10th edition. So it actually kind of changed how much you value with that ability, I think. So, I don't know. We have a Storm Speeder Thunderstrike for +1 to wound against stuff. We have a Talon Strike kill team. Kind of cool to see these guys back on the table. It's Assault Bolters. Double count Talon Strike kill teams, actually. I guess these guys actually get kind of a big leg up with the new cover rules, because they do like basically shoot a bunch of like a ton of kind of like mid-strength weapons that have kind of mid AP, and not having to shoot into -1 AP all the time is sort of a big deal. So these dudes get +1 AP when they deep strike. It's Talon Strike. It's +1 AP and Lance the turn that they come in. So when they're jumping around, they push to AP2 on their Assault Bolters. You can Kraken round them to go to AP3, or you can get Ignore Cover, which of course will let you potentially fish for Sustained more succinctly, although I don't know if we have any +1 to hit. I don't think we do. So I think we're probably just shooting the normal way. But in any case, we can push them to AP3 with a high attack volume, with Oath of Moment, and potentially like lethal hit. You can just basically fish for criticals all day, and 5 Assault Bolters with AP bonuses and lethals and stuff, +2 Plasma Pistols, actually does kind of an insane amount of damage. If you hit the charge out of reserve, they go insane, because the entire unit, they get the +1 AP bonus until the end of the turn. So the entire unit goes to probably wounding you on like, if you're fighting infantry, you wound on like 3s or 2s because you have Lance, and you're all between AP 1 and 2 because there's a bunch of chain swords in there, and then just the regular Inceptors punching you gets essentially Honor the Chaptered. So when the army oftentimes with Deathwatch is like, you skirmish with your opponent early, you have the Spectre's kill team up, you have the Terminators up, your opponent has to commit to kill them to actually take your objectives back. They open themselves something that you could kill, and then you jump your whole army and you doom drop it, And then you just roll like 7 9-inch charges. And if you hit them, it's awesome because you just engage everyone. And suddenly their crackback is like so much more awkward because you have engagement zones the way, you have dudes everywhere, you can threaten into the fray, heroic interventions, all this stuff. And if the Talon Strike kill team hits that 9-inch charge, sometimes you just lose because sometimes they will just like kill a thing, right? They're like, they up, down, they jump in, they shoot like, I don't know, a medium vehicle to death, and they charge like a rhino, and then they beat the rhino to death with their fists. And you're like, wait a minute, hold up. I thought I was going to have like a screening unit here that could prevent this from happening or tag you, but instead it just died. And the Talon Strike kill teams are like really good at that. It's been a while since we've seen these units. When I played Deathwatch, I fucking loved them. They were so sick. The damage from the pistol shots, the Inceptor gunshots is crazy. We have one unit with exterminators, so we can answer heavy infantry probably. And again, like if you don't have an invulnerable save, those things consistently go to AP 5, which is nuts. Yeah, they'll kill you. They'll kill you good. If you're shooting at something at the Thunderstrike tagged, the exterminators could go into like a Land Raider or something. You can Kraken around them, so they go to AP 3 +1 for their ability, +1 for Kraken rounds, and then they wound on 4s, re-rolling. So out of 10 shots, let's assume like we prayed for sustain because of the detachment ability. So we're probably full converting with our rerolls, maybe like 11 hits, and then you wound 75% of them. So you hand your opponent like 7 or 8 AP 5 3 damage saves. So if you're a Land Raider, you average taking like 18 damage. Gross. Absolutely gross. It's a cool unit. The weird part has always been that half of their unit is saddled by like inefficiency, because half of their unit are chainsword guys that are just gonna like be the first guys to die to the incoming attacks or whatever. Although the benefit is that like, because you're at least 50% T6, you are toughness 6. Unlike the Decimus kill teams, which have a T6 guy but don't actually get the benefit until the whole unit's dead, basically. Pretty good stuff. We'd love to see some Deathwatch doing good. Neat. Chat. Now, there were some other builds I wanted to talk about at the same event. This is one of the larger events of the weekend. There's some interesting ones coming from Chaos Space Marines. Oh, this is a good one. Ooh, this is spicy. So also here, what a friendly name, Christopher Pals, I guess, went 5-1. I do wonder if he was 4-2, but had played the winner and ended up getting his score reversed. I think that might have happened there, but I have no idea. Either way, it's a good result with Chaos Space Marines running Murder Talon Raiders and Warp Strike Champions. I'm gonna level. I don't know what most of these things do, so that's always exciting. Warp Strike Champions is the Obliterator detachment. So that lets you up, down, Terminator, Obliterator, and Mutilator units. Fucking cool. That's sick. And then Murder Talon Raiders is the one that I always mess up with because it's the one that isn't. It's the other jump infantry one that isn't the one with Sorrow Sent Vulture. Right? Yeah. It has Pact of Cursed Opinions, which is slightly worse Sorrow Sent Vulture, and I got myself into hot water because I thought they were the same enhancement, and they're not. So I think that did he cut himself? It Warp Strike Champions to DP? This is how little I know about these attachments yet. I have to look up what they do. This is a 2 DP detachment. It gives you Armor of Contempt. We love that for Terminators. It's awesome. It gives you -1 damage. Okay. This is on anything. Armor of Contempt for literally anything. A different AOC, Armor of Corruption, which is fight phase only, -1 damage for 2 on Terminators and Obliterators. Advanced Shoot and Charge on Terminators and Obliterators. Obsec on Terminators and Obliterators. Ignore cover on any 2 Heretic Astartes at Deep Struck. That's good. Okay. Or +2 to charge rolls from Deep Strike. So you get a 7 charge out of Deep Strike. But if you do that, then you can't reroll the charge. But you need a way to find the reroll charge naturally. Fascinating. What a cool combo. Dude, this is sick. Also, Mutilators. We can assume that when I say Obliterators, I also mean Mutilators. Mutilators being just Obliterators but melee. Saying all three is a lot. All right. Let's talk about what's in the list. This combination is cool. I'm very excited. So we're running Huron Blackheart, Masters of the Maelstrom. No attachment for them, by the way. They're just hanging out. They don't go inside a chosen unit or anything. They're just vibing. The chosen have gotten so much more expensive that we cut them. If we are playing the Terminator bricks, especially like Kravik-Morn or a Terminator Lord Terminator brick, then Huron Blackheart making them OC2 is like kind of huge though. So he's kind of vital. We do have a Terminator Sorcerer, so +1 AP on that guy with the Zagula enhancement. What? Improve the attack, strength, armor penetration characteristic of the bearer's weapons by 1. In addition, each time it is set up on the battlefield from reserve, improve the damage characteristic by 1 as well. Oh, excuse me. It's not damage naturally. It's attack, strength, and armor penetration. It gets damage when it arrives from reserve. So and that's all weapons. So the Sorcerer and Terminator armor does his little like little beam gaze thing. So he shoots. What is he playing? A combi weapon. So anti-infantry, and it gets +1 attack. So it can get up to 3 shots anti-infantry at damage 2. Jesus, okay. And then he shoots D6 +1, strength 7, AP 3, D3 +1 damage devastating. Probably sustained, right? Because it's Chaos Space Marines, right? So we get to pray. And probably hit rerolls. That's a lot. Oh, also, he death hexes you first. So you are also +1 AP. So all those attacks from that guy alone are also bonus AP. So it goes to AP 2 damage combi weapon with 3 shots. AP 4 D3 +1 devastating from Infernal Gaze. That fucks. What? And then he gives charge rerolls from Warp Time. And you can pay for +2 charge. So they make a 7-inch charge rerolling out of reserve, which is like an 80% chance to succeed. Whoa! This unit rules. What? That's sick. Oh, we do have. I think this is doing this bug again. So yeah, this is the issue we ran into previously with Eldar. If you dual attach, I don't know how to recreate this, by the way. People have told me they've been able to do it, and I haven't been able to do it. But I think it's like an iOS bug. If you dual attach in a specific sequence between support and leader characters, especially with support units that have leaders that are supposed to join them, and then they embed, it creates this weird bug where it duplicates one of the units. So, in fact, I think Huron Blackheart and the Masters are inside a Legionnaire squad, but the list says it has 2 Masters of the Maelstrom, but in fact, it is not. So that's, I think, a weird bug. Otherwise, of course, you can't take 2 Masters of the Maelstrom. They are epic heroes. We have a Chaos Order Jump Pact with Pact of Cursed Pinions. So that's he gains Demon. And he gains, that's inside not the Warp Strike Hunters, the Murder Talon Raiders. That's the one that I always confuse with Coruscant Vulture. It does the same thing. This is a very annoying. I think someone brought this up. I think I saw in chat there. Somebody brought this up with Grimnar's Mark. That Grimnar's Mark doesn't let you attach to Terminators anymore. Actually incorrect. I recorded a video that I haven't released yet. I might re-record it because I didn't like the version I recorded. But this is such a problem with this effect. This also lets you attach to Warp Talons. The only way you'd know that is by reading the Munitorum Field Manual. It's just not on the district, the thing. Yeah. So, like, you look at this and you're like, all right, 20 points for +1 attack. Fine, I guess. No. Also, you get all of his benefits on Warp Talons, but it doesn't tell you it does that. And it's like a huge problem because I am starting to get comments of people being like, how can a Space Wolf Terminator attach into a Space Wolf character attached to a Terminator squad? He doesn't have the correct keywords. Or how can, what are some of the other ones? Like, Wolfguard Battle Leader attach into Wolfen or whatever. And it's because there are these enhancements that exist, but it doesn't tell you in the enhancement what it does. Very problematic. One of the worst UI decisions I've ever made. It's like bafflingly bad. Like I'm okay with it saying in the Munitorum that it does that. What I'm not okay with is that it not saying anywhere else, because you need the full text of the effect in the rule. We actually just ran into this on stream, where solid terrain features has multiple separate sub rules that are included in different places in the rulebook, and part of them I didn't know. So I actually realized I was learned the other day that solid also prevents model placement. So the keyword that terrain features can have that prevents you from seeing through doors, for example, also prevents you from ending a movement touching that door, because I think the idea is that you would be able to like poke through and see, which is like, I mean, it's kind of how doors work. I don't know. So I go open the door and I see through. What are we talking about? But I didn't know that, because that's not included in the solid rules. It's included in the movement rules. Incredible. Truly incredible. This app is it's like a monkey's paw. It's like, hey, look at this app that has all the rules in it. Monkey's paw curls, but they're not included in places that make any sense at all. Anyway, the Chaos Lord can join Warp Talons. That's sick. That's my tactical tangent is over. Let's talk about this Chaos Lord. So he gives you a free strat, first of all, which is helpful. He also gives you 6-inch pilot and consolidate. The big thing is that he also just improves the average output of the unit, right? He's coming in, with his melee attack. He's coming in with, in this case, probably a Power Fist, yeah. A Power Fist with also, yeah. So for a sec, they use the Harkin World Claimer model, but they just look similar. Breach Storm meta. Come hang out, Ergomat. We'll accept you. There are no Death Guard in Breach Storm, though, I will say. And it is unfortunate. Not yet, anyway. So he's coming with 6 attacks with the Power Fist, because the enhancement does give him that +1 attack. He's sustaining hits, so he probably hits all 6 times, and then he wins you on whatever. But the big thing is that more consistently allows the Warp Talons to kill their target on the charge, which means they get to go into reserve. Not being able to do that is always a problem. So, that's great. I don't know. Pretty cool. We then also have a Chaos Terminator Lord with Axur's Binding Runes. I don't know what these are. This list is so sick. You can Deep Strike turn 1. Nice. He is not taking any special things. However, being a single independent character, you can bring him in to just like do an action. You get Plunder turn 1, and he just hops in the middle of the table. He's -1 damage, so like come fucking or half damage. He's like, come at me, bro, and I'll be gone to ground, and I'll just do the action. And then if you don't kill me, I'll get to go charge. In addition, like he's also getting the detached ability. So he can pick back up to continuously do that. And he can free strat, if you don't need the free strat on the Warp Talons, to uppy himself, right? Or to rapid ingress himself, on a future turn. So you can hold him more reliably. So he's just like a really good little utility piece. He's just a little guy. He's so small. Sick. Sick and cool. I guess you could also free strat +2 to charge for him too, if you're not using it on the other guys. So he actually like can make some pretty consistent charges out of Deep Strike. Not super consistent. Obviously, a 7's a 50-50, but better than just like banging the long charge. We're taking Vashtor because he's great. We're taking Cypher because he's great. We're taking Gravik Morn because he's great. I love it. Also, all these little characters. Dude, this list fucking rules. All these little characters, Chaos Lords and Gravik Morn, are Terminators, so they can pick up. This isn't Chaos Terminators, it's Heretic Astartes Terminators, which means it's anyone with the Terminator keyword. So Gravik Morn can just be like, jump down, Bale Flamer a unit to death, and then like uppy the next turn, and then jump down, Baleflamer another unit to death. Plus, if you like select like some idiot utility unit with him, he jumps in and he comes in with like full rerolls, just blasts you, and then just disappears, fades away into the darkness. And you're like, God, I have to deal with this fucking guy. That's sick. Chaos Mob, or Cultist Mob, Chaos Bikers, a Mutilator unit. Yay, we do have some Mutilators. Seeing some play. Red Corsair Raiders and Nurglings. Kind of light on the back end, not gonna lie. But the, I mean, this list is technical as fuck, right? Every time you look at a list, this is either, it's a kind of common refrain in Warhammer 40,000 list building, where it's either, if you look at a list and it looks like just a pile, right? It's just an insane group of things. It's either you're about to like destroy someone who just bought an army off eBay, or this army is like the most technical composition you've ever seen in your life. And this feels like the latter for sure. We have this like super cool like disruptor unit in this Terminator squad that can jump in and shoot a unit to death and then charge very consistently out of reserve and kill another unit, take your objective. We're following that up with Masters of the Maelstrom, which are just great, obviously, in general. They're relatively tanky. They're hard to take down. They can regenerate themselves. Super good unit, of course. We then have the Warp Talon unit, which is very fast and can hit stuff and then go into reserve and then constantly be attritioning your army down. And then do we just follow that up with just a bunch of these little characters everywhere? There's characters everywhere. They're all jumping around and killing your Mac line. And if you can't deal with that, it's just a mess. What a sick army. This is so good, dude. Absolutely insane. Fought Vashtor for the first time a few weeks ago. The Hazardous debuff is brutal. Yeah, for sure. Especially with the new rules where it's twice as likely to trigger. Vashtor can just kill you by accident, right? You're like, I guess I'll shoot him with my anti-tank gun, and your tank just like takes 9 damage out of nowhere, and you're like, shit. Yeah, Vashtor is disgusting, for sure. Also, just -1 to be hit on a very like tough defensive profile, right? Because he's T10, 14 wounds. He's just kind of a monster, and if you're within 18, you're just -1 to hit him. Yeah, I think Vashtor is amazing, for sure. What a glow up this man has gotten. Did anybody remember when Vashtor came out and he was just like the biggest joke? It was this big thing, this big reveal, you know, new guys wake up, new like Chaos Demon Prince, like Bellacore level character just dropped, and he came out and he was just the worst. And they had to massively glow him up. He was like explicitly only good if you had a vehicle, and even then he was like less good than most other like normal Demon Prince builds. And they just buffed him so many times over like consecutively. Yeah. Pretty good. This is a really cool list. I'm so into it. What a sick brew. All right, chat. From there, the rest of the X1s at this event were relatively straightforward. We had some Adeptus Custodes, which is like Lions and Might of the Moritoi. We had some Thousand Suns. That is Rubrique Phalanx, so it's just a bunch of Terminator stuff. They're kind of like normal builds. We did have another large event, though, and that is the Utah Cup. So this is major level. A big, huge 135 players. Let's go. Good stuff. Yeah, we had some pretty big results. Raven Guard, Isaac Toretta, our very own Camino Cha-Cha, ended up going 6-0 with that one using Shadow Mark Talon. We had some Emperor's Children that I talked about over the weekend or on my Monday video. We also had some cool stuff going down lower on. The first one I want to talk about is a bit of a, I don't know. This build's very interesting because it's very different than what I would expect. It is Lords of the Warp and Shadow Legion. So it's still running Blood Crushers, but it's not running Cavalcade Blood Crushers, which is kind of a massive difference. So in Cavalcade of Chaos, the Blood Crushers can get a +1 to engagement range. There we go. +1 to engagement range with an enhancement, Soul Shattering Charge. When they charge, they can fight things within 3 inches of them instead of 2 inches. So you can actually get all of the Blood Crushers in the normal way. You also get access to mobile, so you can go through walls, which is very relevant, especially with how fast these guys are. So not playing that is interesting because we're basically relying almost entirely on the Shadow Legion advance and charge buff to get the unit in. However, Lords of the Warp... Did I call it Lords of the Forge earlier? I think I did. I'm so admech pilled. We keep watching a Darren's games for the Invitational, and I'm so a bit like my muscle memory immediately goes to talk about Adeptus Mechanicus lists. Lords of the Warp is very interesting. It gives your character models +1 leadership and OC characteristic. So that means this guy, the Scoutmaster, I believe, goes to leadership 5 with +1 to test. Which I think is he's leadership 7. So he goes to 6 with +1 and +1 for Battle Shock. So he goes to a 4. He passes Battle Shock on a 4 because he has a banner, which is +1 to leadership checks, and he has the shadow bonus if you're in shadows, which he probably is. Which is kind of interesting. The extra OC is interesting as well, because I think it puts the Skullmaster himself to OC 3. So he himself is not too bad at taking objectives. It affects, I believe, only his model, no one else. Lords of the Warp is the thing. Yeah, so the rest of the unit's still OC 2, but it means that one Blood Crusher and the Skullmaster can test 5 OC on an objective. So if you have like 5 utility models there, they'll take it from you. And a lot of times what you're trying to do with this unit is like enable slingshots for the Skullmaster, because he himself hits really hard because he's a 3 damage sword. That like the +1 OC is actually very relevant. So kind of a cool detachment. I don't know if there's any stratagems we're particularly using. We can get +1 attack. That's a big deal, actually, because the Blood Crushers each have 2 melee weapons. They have the Juggernaut and the sword on the actual Bloodletter. The +1 attack goes pretty far for them. So we're running 1 with Leaping Shadows, so he can scout before the game begins and then charge you on turn 1. Pretty spooky. I think we saw a lot of people running that combination in the Cavalcade builds. We have another one with no enhancement. We have a Bloodmaster with a Bloodletter unit. Another Bloodmaster with a Bloodletter unit. Another Bloodmaster with a Bloodletter unit. The Bloodmasters, by the way, have the same melee profile sans the Juggernaut that the actual Skullmaster does. They have the same sword. So you're oftentimes able to like spin these dudes in and just like kill 5 Space Marines or something pretty consistently with just him and maybe one other guy. So you can oftentimes do a thing where you get like a 2-for-1 on utility units with these guys. Plus they're fast. Like the Bloodmaster obviously becomes OC2. You could give them the +1 attack as well. It doesn't go quite as far as it does on the Skullmaster's units, but it is I don't know, still pretty good. We then have double Renmaster on Blood Thrones, so we can give +1 strength, AP, and damage. That also affects the Blood Thrones are mounted, so that they also get the benefit of the Lords of the Warp. So they will also get the +1 OC as well. Pretty neat. And then we have a bunch of Plague Bearers and Fleshhounds for utility and cultists. So it's just a big horde. It's just a big horde of guys, but it's really fast. 30 Bloodletters with attached characters, all running at you, plus 12 Blood Crushers running at you. One of them scouts, so you can clear the way. And sometimes you can like 3 for the scouting unit because they inflict mortal wounds on the charge. You can kill a unit in a lot of cases. They average 7 mortals. So if you have like 5 infantry in front of them, you can charge them, kill them, and then overrun, get the Skullmaster into one thing and get their unit into another thing and kill 2 more units. So if your opponent has a lot of these like mid-sized utility squads that they're going to try to move block you with, the Skullmaster with the Shadows can just go in and probably kill all of them, which is kind of spooky. If you can make it work on coherency. Actually, establishing the 9-inch coherency that far laterally can be difficult, although the Blood Crusher spaces are really big, so it's not too bad. And then, once you get stuck in, you of course just have all these dudes. There's a Lance and +1 AP strat inside Shadow Legion. So you have access to 2 separate attack bonuses, offensive bonuses for Khorne Demons. between these two detachments. They all advance and charge. They're all relatively quick. So the rest of the army can just like, sort of absorb the back. You can then lock things in with the Plague Bearers and then call it a day. Super cool list. This list is awesome. Plague Bearers are hella annoying to kill. Yeah. Yeah, they get the -1 to be wounded if your strength is high enough. So, like, a lot of the high, like, multi-damage blast weapons wound them on 4s, you know? You're talking about, like, I have a strength 7, 2 damage, or strength 6, 2 damage gun, or, like, a plasma gun or something. It wounds them on 4s most of the cases, which is crazy. This list is so sick. I don't know. I love it. I think it's cool that demons are still... I mean, in some way, it's, like, more of the same. But it is cool that, in addition to Legion of Excess, you can also find ways to play demons that aren't simply Slaanesh or Cavalcade of Chaos. This is a very similar composition to Cavalcade of Chaos, but it's a little different. It's a little different. Kind of cool. I love it. I love it, chat. I also think it's a little bit less hoardy. I mean, it's like still 80 models or something, but or more than that. It's like 100. Because of the cultists. But it's like a little bit less hoardy than some of the really, really pushed, like, what is it? Like Legions of the Warp? Warptide? The Warptide plus Shadow Legion lists that we've seen like going around where it's like, it's just a billion dudes that are all hard to kill. And you're like, okay, cool. Everyone's -1 to hit or -1 to wound or some combination of the two. And really fast. It's sweet. Let's go. Or Warptide plus Plague. Yeah. Warptide plus Plague also good for sure. I live in fear of that detachment, of that combination. Because, like, the overlapping debuffs are really bad for the armies that I play. I typically play, like, very sort of just big rush armies. Now, in addition to that chat, we have some other things we want to talk about. There's a lot of like, sort of top tier, but not necessarily winning salamanders. Bit of an interesting take on Dark Angels. I think I'm going to talk about Dark Angels in my next Advanced Tactics video. I got some good feedback from the previous one that I did. So I did a video talking about Equatorial Orc Hordes and some of the like specific things that you can do to counter them and some of the strengths of the list, like the kind of weird strengths of the list. I'm going to do something similar, I think, momentarily here for Darkflight Pursuit, because I think that's like very meta right now. But the goal is, in order to keep, useful content on the membership, is for to do either weekly or bi-weekly videos where I break down specific lists in the meta, and that'll be kind of a rotating series because there is going to be a lot of rotation. Of course, in the next like 2 to 3 weeks, we're probably going to see another data slate update, so there's going to be a lot of changes and shifts, but I'd like to continue to do that and have it be something that like is good for more briefer spans of time. So that was the first one, and I'll probably do a Darkflight Pursuit one. Can Genestealer Cult bring back characters? Wondering if support character is killed for not joining and then can come back later. No, you cannot bring back characters in Genestealer Cult. The characters do not have the army ability that lets them regenerate, and so they're just excluded from the reanimation. Once the unit dies, the character dies forever, and the rest of the unit can come back. But there's no way to regenerate them otherwise. But the other thing, too, is that support characters don't die if they're not attached. They just can't not be attached. So the list is just illegal. It's part of the issue. Like, you can't just repair that with, like, oh, well, the character's dead. Like, the list itself is a gameplay violation. Let's talk about some Dark Angels. So this is, so the problem that they fixed, the issue is that, for Genestealer Cult, the issue was that every model on 11th edition's release, every model in the cult unit had to have the army ability. And because they didn't want characters to come back, the characters never had the army ability. So when your unit died, the army ability would check, did everyone have the army ability? And because characters no longer detach from their unit when they're destroyed, the rules would be like, nope, your character doesn't have Cult Ambush, so your unit is ineligible to respawn. And so if you had an attached character inside your squad, the squad just could never come back ever at all, period. Once it was dead forever. What they changed was that now when the unit dies, the character is destroyed permanently, and you just check the rest of the unit. The weird idiosyncrasy that raises is that you have to kill the character to respawn the unit, even if the rest of the unit is dead. So there is like still some strangeness with it because the unit as a conjoined, whole isn't considered destroyed until the attached character is also destroyed. So if you have like an invuln save or your Biophagus, or not your Biophagus, your Benefictus uses their invuln, tanks a bunch of damage, kills all the neophytes that were in the unit, and the Benefictus is just standing there on a pile of corpses. Those corpses can't be recycled until the Benefictus dies. So your opponent could be like, I don't know, shoot me with a laser cannon, and I'll just let you not bring back 20 neophytes. That's fine. Yeah, anyway, let's talk about this list. That's some Genestealer Cult rule stuff. So this is Darkflight Pursuit, which is, of course, basically the Landspeeder Vengeance detachment at this point. It gives them ignore cover, and it gives them access to Nightforge Battery, which is the reroll attack volume enhancement, which is incredibly powerful. You also then get Ironstorm Spearhead, which is reroll a hit or wound roll. The benefit here, I assume, is what we're going to be able to do is use this on Landspeeder Vengeances. Oh, we only brought 2. That's actually pretty reasonable. But the Landspeeder Vengeance gets to roll a number of attacks, reroll the number of attacks, roll those attacks to hit, reroll one of the hits, roll them to wound, reroll all the wound rolls because they're twin linked. So you basically reroll every single step of the process. These things just become hyper efficient, hyper consistent. Just so many rerolls, all stacked up on one another. This is also a detachment that tends to play better with a higher unit count because you get more rerolls when you do that. Landspeeder Vengeances do also kind of prey on high unit counts because when you kill things, they shoot you. So you don't want that to happen. So if we're running a bunch of things like Landspeeders, for example, the Vengeances become very powerful. So we're running Darkflight Pursuit plus Ironstorm. We're taking Azrael, an Ancient with Master of Machine War, so we can get access to Advance and Shoot, plus an Inner Circle Companion Squad. That's interesting. Master of Machine War on the Ancients. It is, it's selected in the command phase, I believe, and it's within 6 inches, so it does require that the Ancient sort of trail towards the remainder, like near the rest of the vehicles. But I imagine you're only using it on like the first 2 battle rounds in most cases anyway. We then have Inner Circle Companion Squad, Lionel Johnson, 1 Tech Marine with target augury web, so that's lethal hits to one of the vehicles. Probably will be on the big Redemptors or something. A Tech Marine with an Adept of the Omnissiah, so that's a damage blank on a vehicle. Intercessor Squad for the back line. We have 1 Incursor unit to buff these Vengeances, so the Vengeances can be hitting on 2s or 2s because they ignore cover, and then have a floating reroll, and then reroll all of their attack, their number of attack and their wound rolls. So they're just, again, shooting super duper consistently. And then we have a bunch of Redemptor Dreadnoughts and a Stormspeeder Thunderstrike. So we can get +1 to wound for all these plasma guns. 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, both. Well, one's bringing heavy Onslaught Gatling. Cool. I guess it's cheaper, so that it lets you fit the second one in. But it's also, it's good into light infantry. That actually, like, consistently killing a bunch of light infantry might be a little bit of a problem. If you can shoot one of them to, like, one model to death, for example, with a heavy bolter or an assault cannon or something. One of these Vengeances is running a heavy bolter and one of them's not. I wonder if that's on purpose. Actually, don't know. Interesting. If you shoot like one model to death, you can then trigger Mercia's weakness and you get crit 5, like lethal sustain potentially on the onslaught. So you can fire double onslaughts into like a big unit of Orc boys or something and like basically just gat down most of them. Whereas otherwise, you have so many individual anti-infantry activations that your opponent gets to manipulate where their model positioning is. So, for example, if we're just shooting like 4 or 5 assault cannons at a single unit, a lot of times you're going to be able to pull models out of line of sight for further attacks. Right? If we shoot the first one, we kill 3 dudes in the front. We shoot the next one, three dudes that aren't behind a terrain feature. Then the third one's out of line of sight, for example. However, if the Redemptor shoots, and you pile the buffs on him, he's likely to just kill most of the unit in one shot. I imagine that's kind of the arithmetic there. Plus, he's cheaper. We don't really need the extra, like, another 3 damage blast weapon because we have so many of those in the army already. Cool army, chat. Also, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, just being super hard to kill, naturally have synergy with these kind of units. The Inner Circle Companions and Lionel Johnson project like so much threat in the center of the battlefield. Their threat range isn't super long in this detachment because they have no access to advance and charge or anything. However, your opponent has to engage with the Redemptors, otherwise you just win, because we're playing Take and Hold from Ironstorm Spearhead. So like we could just put Redemptors in the center objectives. Your opponent's like, I have to engage with them to do anything. So they automatically will give you things that the Inner Circle Companions and Lionel Johnson can charge. So Lionel Johnson plus robots is like a classic build. that's real OG kind of stuff. Or back in the day, it was Wrath of the Rock with a bunch of Terminators, and the Terminators would just stand on the objective, and you would be like, come to the objective, and then Lionel Johnson's like sharpening his sword, and you're like, oh boy, spooky. Can you buy Warhammer miniatures at Michael's? I don't believe so. I have a Michael's near me. I go there every once in a while, and I've never once seen a Warhammer miniature in any Michael's store. Warhammer tends to be more boutique. I would look for explicitly game stores. But like mainline hobby stores or train stores will typically not have them. Dark Angel Companions are so good. Inner Circle Companions, for sure. Ran 18 of them in a local RTT. Fuck yeah. That's sick. It's a cool unit too, right? They're just like hit hard and they're annoying to kill, and you're just like, these guys just like have such a good thing. Warhammer's too satanic for Michael's Hobby Lobby. That might be true. It's annoying too because it's like those are places that you get a lot of good hobby equipment, right? Like big box craft stores typically have things to hobby with at cheaper than going to a game store. Like a game store will sell you paints and glue and stuff, but there'll be like name brand paints and glue and they'll cost you a lot. But if you just want a bunch of plastic glue, the modeling section in Michael's you can get plastic glue for like $2 or $3 or whatever. So, but like, you know, they don't actually sell the kits. They just sell everything around it. A lot of times you can buy like scenery there. You can buy, you know, like grass tufts. You can buy fake trees and hobby shears and all these things that are very helpful, but the models themselves. All right. That was fun. Let's talk about Eldar. Eldar's been kind of in a rut lately. However, we did have some Eldar at Utah that did pretty well. Get paints at Michael's for modeling. I'm a heretic and I buy paints. Oh, actually, I do have some Michael's paints right next to me. This is the white I use on my Tyranids. Look at that. Boom. And in comparison to Games Workshop paint, it looks expensive because it's Winsor Newton, but it's not. It was like $8, I think, and it would have been like $20 for the GW paint. I also buy a lot of the paints I use for like big stuff is I get them from Walmart. Don't tell anyone. I'm a fake hobbyist. My demons are painted largely in Walmart paints. At least all the greens and stuff. I found a series of greens that like fade into each other really nicely that I really liked. And I was like, they're shitty Walmart paints. Oh well, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So yeah. Yeah, we can talk about orc stuff at the end. The orc, like the psyker mechanics at the end. I don't know how much stock I put into that picture, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It would be nice to see some actual psychic mechanics return to the game. It would suck if they return in a slow rollout over the course of codexes rather than a core rules update, but we'll see. We'll see how we do. Amber Newton looking to get into Warhammer. Don't have a lot of hobby stores. Yeah, the hobby stores, like game stores themselves, are very helpful. Especially if you're new and you're looking for like someone to give you advice or like give you tips. They aren't strictly necessary. You can just buy miniatures online and buy your like hobby supplies and stuff at a hobby store. But I think it's you know, if you have a local game store, we always like to support the local game stores because they're sort of the lifeblood of a lot of the community. But if you don't have one, you don't have one. So you can go to you can buy Warhammer miniatures on Amazon. I did it the other day, in fact, because I thought I might need a unit before a tournament. And so I bought one on Amazon and I got it the next day. And I was like, sick. This is awesome. What a time we live in. Pretty cool. Also, shopping used miniatures online. Yeah, that can also be helpful too. Especially if you're brand new and you're just getting in. and somebody's just like selling a bunch of models for very cheap, you can just get in. It doesn't really matter what they are, but it gives you like fodder to practice on and to play around with. If a paint looks good, is it shitty? Yeah, it's low pigment count. It's like hard to work with if it's low pigment count because you need a lot of it in order to actually apply coverage to a space. That's the difference between model paints and typical art paints, I guess, is that because model paints need to be able to not obscure detail, they have a like dramatically higher pigment count than a paint that you might use on a canvas. Yeah. How should you pick what miniatures to get? I have 2 pieces of advice. First of all, you should get the ones you think are neat. That's 90% of it. If you think they look cool, you should buy them and paint them because you'll be like, these are cool. If you are interested in gameplay, doing some research on at least the play style of a faction is good. But if you don't know about any of that and you don't care so much, just if they look cool, fucking get them. 90% of this hobby is looking cool. If we didn't want to look cool, we would play Magic the Gathering. But we want the game to look sick, so we play a game with tiny toy soldiers, which is awesome. But yeah, that would be my piece of advice for sure. Getting Tyranids? Fair enough. Tyranids are so good because speaking personally, as someone who owns a fucking Harridan. Where's Harridan? Oh, he's behind my Armageddon box. God damn it. As someone with like 20,000 points of Tyranids, they're cool because they have a cohesive aesthetic. 90% of the factions of the game, you look at and you're like, I think these belong to a faction, but I can never be quite sure because they all have evolved over decades or whatever. Tyranids are like, we locked in a look. They have 6 limbs and a shell and then some skinny bits with like a lobster thing in the joints. And that's what every Tyranid looks like. So if you look at a Tyranid, you know it's a Tyranid. You can't look at a Tyranid and confuse it for a Chaos Demon. Whereas you can do that for a lot of other factions in 40k, which I think is fucking awesome. But yeah, Tyranids are great. I'm going to do how to play video on Tyranids probably like within the next week or 2. I'll do a getting started video that'll break down. We're going to start rebooting that series. I had a whole series of them for almost every faction in the game from 10th edition, and then I stopped doing them because 11th edition came out, so everything was different. Of course, the old ones are not as helpful anymore. However, we're going to reboot it. We're going to start with Tyranids because I put almost all of my gameplay into Tyranids this edition. And yeah, I think it's going to, I don't know, I'm excited about it. I think that Tyranids are pretty sick. Thought somebody had seen every possible Tyranid list and somebody has used the fortification, the Spore Assist. There was a build in 10th that used it with Assimilation Swarm because it can generate Spore Mines, and Spore Mines are very useful in Assimilation Swarm for killing yourself, which is weird. That sounds strange, but what you want is models that can spawn and then on the next turn run into melee to die so you can pay a command point to reanimate models. So sometimes what you do is like you set up this really convoluted thing where you chain a Harvester back to like a Tyrant Guard squad, for example, and you want to get your Hive Tyrant into melee. So you have a Spore Assist, make a Muculid Spore in the middle. It has to stay there for a turn because it has to move. Then the next turn, you run a Harvester up to your opponent. Then you run the Muculid Spore into your opponent. You blow it up. You harvest it because the Tyranid unit was destroyed. You grab it, and then you send that harvest, usually with the enhancement to give extra biophagic flow or whatever. Extra harvest range. You send the regeneration back to the Tyrant Guard unit, and you regenerate a Tyrant Guard in front of you, and you get like plus 3 inches of movement. It's fucking too complicated. It's a lot. But that was a build for a while that was like semi-functional, I guess. Some people made it work. It was kind of a cool combo build. I do like stuff like that, but it did require a lot of moving parts. But yeah, we'll talk about Assimilation Swarm in a sec here, actually. But I do think, I mean, Tyranids just have so many cool detachments right now. If you, like, they're decidedly, like, kind of B tier. If you work hard at it, you can be successful with Tyranids for sure. But the cool thing about Tyranids is that you can play a lot of compositions, and it's gonna be pretty good. Like, their baseline is very high, because they're just, like, have fast things and things that could take objectives. And you're like, neat. That's how you win games of 40K at the end of the day. So we're good to go. Well, I'm happy to help out, Amber, by the way. So I hope you hope that did help. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. My Discord is, of course, the my link tree. Link is in the video description, and you can find me really easily. Or you can hit !Discord. There's lots of people in the Discord that will help you with Tyranids and stuff. If you have any questions or getting started in 40K in general, we have a whole mentors section for people with questions getting in. With that, we'll talk about Seer Council at long last. We can talk about this detachment. This is running Armored Warhost, which unlocks reconnaissance for it, which is usually pretty good for especially this detachment, because you oftentimes want to be taking a critical mass of Skyrunner characters or Skyrunner individuals. I guess not necessarily characters, because you can take Warlocks and you can take Farseers, and they just run everywhere. They're super fast. They unlock a lot of your buffs, especially things like, I think it's Tears of Isha, which is the stratagem you use when people move near you and you blow them up with mortal wounds. So you can like run a character in front of a unit, mess up their movement, and then when they move, you like kill half of them, depending on how many fate dice you have. So we have a Farseer with Runes of Warding. I'm going to double check what that one is. That is a 4+ field of pain against psychic attacks and mortal wounds, as well as, look at this OG ruling here. Critical wounds caused by attacks with the devastating wounds ability. Classic. That's a 10th edition rule right there. We have a Warlock Conclave with a standard Warlock plus a Guardian Defender squad. For whatever reason, we're able to quad attach here, and it doesn't come up with a bug, but it is what it is. We have an Autarch Wayleaper. A Avatar of Cain plus Eldred Ulthran. Double Corsair Void Reavers. A double Corsair Sky Reavers. This is largely in service of the reconnaissance disposition, because we want to have so many units that we can trade for objectives and we can run to table quarters. Especially with priority assets being like the meta force disposition right now. It's a little rough for reconnaissance because you have to constantly take midboard in order to consistently score. So you need this like critical mass of just like idiots, like decent OCE, like morons you can just fucking feed into the middle. What I've learned so far is that a lot of reconnaissance builds are mostly about trading rather than necessarily like actually outflanking your opponent. The Conclave is not a character. It's essentially the same effect as the Masters of the Maelstrom, I think. Yeah, so the Conclave embeds into a unit, and then you attach a support and the Farseer into that unit as well. It's kind of weird. I think that the way you do it in the app is you like attach one of the characters to the unit and one of the characters to the other unit, and then you attach the first unit to the second unit. It's very confusing. But at the end of the day, yeah, these guys don't join, or they don't attach, they join. They become part of the Guardian Defender datasheet. So you can attach a support and a leader character to the combination. We then have a D-Cannon platform, 2 Shadow Weaver platforms, 2 Striking Scorpions, 2 Vipers, 3 Warlock Skyrunners, excuse me, a Warp Spider unit, and a Wraith Lord. Wraith Lord's just like such an efficient profile. For 125, you get just like a bunch of anti-tank attacks and 2 Flamers. Pretty awesome. What's interesting about this is that it's essentially entirely foregone any Aspect Warriors. We have the 1 Warp Spider squad, so we can just like at any point windmill spam the 27-inch movement if we need it. And we have the 2 Striking Scorpion squads for like midboard control. And that's literally it. Whereas a lot of the builds in this detachment typically focus on like huge bricks of like massive numbers of Fire Dragons or of Dark Reapers, so they can teleport them around with Fate, Untreaded Truth, excuse me. And we didn't do that. We are just explicitly playing tons and tons of little tiny units to do primary more consistently. This is just very much a scoring list. That said, the combination of Eldrad plus this brick will do so much phenomenal damage. It's crazy. The warlocks all shoot. I think I'm gonna butcher the profile, but I believe it's D6 plus 2, strength 7, AP 1 or AP 2. Is it 7, 2, 1? Now I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna double check. I know it's strength 7, and I know they shoot a billion of them. It is 5, 1, 1. I think. Oh, it's plus 1 attack and strength, so I think it just locks onto strength characteristic. Psychic Communion, plus 1 attack and strength for each psyker within 6. Because you end up having 5 psychers within 6, it's maxed out all the time, basically. So you're shooting 5 of those profiles total at 7, D6 plus 2, 7, 1, 2. So it's an average of 25 auto hits, I think. 28, actually. It's like 28. Eldrad can then give them plus 1 to wound, and then you have a Bright Lance with an auto 6 from the Farseer as well. So this unit can just dumpster damage into something. The Vipers will also help there, because they can apply AP bonus, so they can become AP 2. It naturally basically ignores cover, because you have the it's a torrent. It's a psychic torrent, so it doesn't care about anything like that. And those 5 warlocks will just hop in and blow something up if they need to. In most instances, it's like handing you 14 plus saves, plus it overwatches really well as well. So in totality, it can do just a tremendous amount of damage. I didn't actually bring up the thing, but here's the ability. That's the ability that applies to that weapon. It's a lot. So oftentimes we see that backed up by other Aspect Warrior bricks, but we didn't do that. We just took a bunch of individual little guys. Pretty neat. I like it. And I think last up here, we can talk about some Tyranids. I know everybody's excited about it. I saved the best for last, chat. Because at X1, 5 and 1 over here is Brian McCaddy, running Assimilation Swarm plus Talons of the Norn Queen. So the combo where you get like 4+ invuln save Norn Assimilators, and you can heal them or they heal themselves. Pretty cool. In this case, we're running Swarmlord with a 6 brick of Tyrant Guard. Pretty big. But the big thing here, of course, is that that's 24 wounds that you have to chew through to actually deal with the Swarmlord. And those 24 wounds can regenerate as over the course of the turn, right? So you can Harvester them for 1 regeneration. You can lose a unit for 1 more regeneration. They can kill something, get another regeneration. So if you pump command points into that unit, you can just constantly be recycling Tyrant Guard back into the ecosystem, essentially. We have a Last Whip Tyranid Prime with Hormagaunts. Now the Hormagaunts also have essentially the same effect. Oops, I brought up the ability and then I closed it. Like a goober. Here we go. Because they're endless multitudes, they get 3 models back. This is a pretty common, in a lot of the armies that are running 20 Hormagaunts, this is a pretty common interaction to gain extra movement or extra OC into particular spots. So you can, for example, put 3 Hormagaunts on an objective. If your opponent attacks them, first of all, you can Blood Surge, which is always spooky. But you can pull the ones off of the objective, and so the rest are hiding behind the objective. Your opponent goes, okay, I've cleared the objective. Then you go, all right, I'll Harvester them in your command phase before you score, and then you drop the Hormagaunts back on the objective, and you reclaim the objective. So they're like really obnoxious to take down. It's also kind of an annoying unit in general. Just 20 guys is like sometimes not the easiest thing to kill, especially if they back up a 3+ save, because a lot of times what happens is that the unit gets attacked, the Hormagaunts all die, but they absorb all the low saving throws, right? So it's like I have 10 Hormagaunts and my opponent hands me 18 saves, and the prime saves on 5s. Any of the lower than 5s are going to sink into a Hormagaunt. They're probably going to eat all of the low saving throws, and the Tyranid Prime just eats all the 5s and lives, and then Blood Surges and beats the shit out of some people. Pretty good stuff. We've got 1, the Red Terror. That's interesting. Is the Red Terror a Harvester? It would actually kind of make sense because she eats people. I just looked up Harvester. That's not helpful. Burrower, Vanguard Invader. Nope. Interesting. I wonder why we are playing the Red Terror. I guess like it's just a useful utility piece. I did see some people, I don't know, like the value proposition's kind of narrow because I've seen some people playing Red Terror simply as like an up-down bot where she just teleports around and she sometimes does actions and then she like rolls a charge. Not the turn she's doing actions, obviously, a different turn. She rolls a charge and then she fails it and then she goes into reserve. And that seems for 130, it feels like we could get in Tyranids especially, like you could get basically 2 additional utility units for that. And I guess it's like I always question whether or not the Red Terror adds enough value in a detachment where she isn't explicitly synergistic. And I have seen some games where Red Terror has looked really bad for just not hitting the charge, like the 9 charges out of reserve. But I don't know. Obviously, I didn't go 5-1 with the Assimilation Swarm, so maybe I'm not that great. Red Terror forces the opponent to screen backline. I mean, you could do that with just anything. Honestly, like Spore Mines oftentimes force your opponent to screen backline as well, because you're threatening back. You're threatening, what's the word? Behind enemy lines, like so consistently. It's almost like if that's what you wanted, you might as well take Raveners. Obviously, like they aren't as good, but they are infantry, so when they come in, they can hide. They can't like try a charge and then fail it and go into reserve. But because they can interact with the hidden mechanic, and they're harder to screen because they're infantry and can manipulate their presence on the board. Whereas the Red Terror is like 100 mil base. It's fucking massive. I don't know. I guess it makes sense. The other thing too is that Raveners, if you don't lose the unit, you can regenerate them. And you can bring models back, whereas Red Terror usually just dies because she's like fucking the worst defensive profile known to man. That's very curious. I'm interested in that. We have double Haruspex, a Biovore, double Norn Assimilator plus Norn Emissary. So we're paying a premium for Norn Assimilator number 2, but they do have the 4+ the 4+ invulnerable save. You can access a 5+ Feel No Pain, or a 4+ Feel No Pain even. I think you have to be controlling an objective though, which is awkward. It's a little bit tough. It's a Blade of Carapace. Oh, no, excuse me. So it's just Harvester only. It gives you a 5+ Feel No Pain, but it gives you a 4 if you're controlling an objective marker. Interesting. So that would be... So you can just pay for it to gain Feel No Pain when it's off the objective, which is very valuable for these guys. Because they constantly heal themselves, keeping them topped off is really important, like making sure they don't take crippling damage early. And being able to do that when they're not on their chosen objective is huge. Plus, their like damage output's actually insane. Inside Talons of the Norn Queen, you can push their strength up to 15, which is like unheard of for Tyranids. The other thing too is that it does feel very command point intensive. But I mean, I guess it works. We have a Pyrovore squad, 2 Pyrovores plus a Psychophage, plus that's it. I do like this list. Very straightforward. Just a bunch of big idiots. No guns either, which is interesting. The Assimilation Swarm does feel like in some cases you can try to play like a bit of, you can get into a slug match with some other like ranged style, primarily ranged armies where you're rocking up against Land Raiders or something, and you can just like trade shots with them because you can ablative armor your guys and then heal them, like the ablative armor at Tyran effects, for example, to blank damage. You live barely and then you start healing them back up and they just continuously shoot back. But the Tyranid guns are just so inconsistent these days. It just feels so bad to actually interact with them. But the Norns, they are fast enough and they are punchy enough to go right up the middle and beat up some people. So that's pretty cool. Coolest, chat. I love it. I gotta play some Assimilation Swarm. Honestly, I think that these days, the writing's on the wall that Assimilation Swarm is pretty neat. I've been playing all the other detachments that are a little bit faster, but Assimilation Swarm does seem like it might have the tankiness that Tyranids are looking for. Ooh. In any case, chat. Oh, we wanted to talk about the leaky thing. Let me pull that up. I know I have a thing about it. There we go. So this was a potential leak from the new Ork Codex. I'm not 100% sure how I don't take it. I mean, the grain of salt here is fucking huge. I'm about to get hypertension with how much my sodium intake has increased. Because it does seem like a pretty dramatic change to how Games Workshop has been approaching these units in the past. This ability as well, like, I'm curious to see what that's attached to. I would even just be interested to see if, like, they add, like, USRs into codexes. Like, that also feels kind of against the grain a little bit here. So I'm skeptical of this, if only because it just seems so weird from, like, a design standpoint. But I mean, we've never accused Warhammer of being normal, so that does make sense. So the first ability that was leaked here is the boss, which, if a model with the ability is your warlord, you gain a command point, which would speak to a change in the command point economy from the way that orcs currently work, because currently they're focused entirely on Gretchen to fuel themselves with command points, and you see people taking these networks of Gretchen in the backline to get to objectives and to generate stuff. Changing that, because of course you can't gain more than one command point a turn, outside of the normal start of turn command points, changing that to just be if your warlord is on the battlefield and has this one particular ability, I think pulls a lot of focus away from that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I don't know who would have this. It would be shocking to me if it was just like a war boss ability that just gave you command points every turn. But maybe it's a piece of tension where you can either have like a war boss or a war boss with an enhancement that can get this, or you can have Ghazghkull, because Ghazghkull Supreme commanders your warlord selection onto him, and then you have to take something else, and that might be like an interesting decision point. I don't know. I have no idea. It would, I think, signal a dramatic change to how orcs treat command points, because they're so reliant on Gretchen right now. Unstable Energies is the other one, which is a Psyker level ability. Pretty interesting. Psyker units with the ability have a Psyker level of 1 or higher specified in that unit's abilities. Each psychic ability has a psychic level of 1 or higher. Each psychic ability has a psychic level of 1 or higher specified in the ability's name. So you would be like, duh, jump, psychic ability level 1. In a battle round, a friendly Orc Psyker unit, you can use a number of psychic abilities whose total psychic levels does not exceed that Psyker unit's psychic level. For example, in a battle round, a Psyker level 3 unit could use 3 psychic level 1 abilities, or 1 psychic level 1 ability and 2 psychic level 2 abilities, or 1 psychic level 3 ability. So it essentially turns psychic abilities into like a points buy system where you have each unit has a certain like limited number of resources that they can use, and ideally they could choose between a selection of abilities that they could use with this effect. And you could see this, for example, changing in like Librarius Conclave could change to be like, you gain all your librarians are psychic level 2, and they each gain 2, like, they each gain access to a new psychic ability, which is like perform biomancy on your unit, or perform telekinesis, or for example. And of course these guys would be like, the weird boys can like shoot laser beams out of their brain, or they can to jump themselves or whatever. On the top end, I mean, I love this. I love it, chat. I think this is sick. All I want is for psychic to be a mechanic again, and not just a largely meaningless keyword. It would also make a lot of sense as well if we're in this phase right now where they have had to like, it's kind of tippy-toe around how psychic weapons work, because psychic weapons are so powerful because of the fact that they just ignore half the things in the game. If the reason for that is that as we see new psychers come out, their weapons become a psychic purchase that they get from their psyker levels, rather than being just a gun they have, that is much cooler. So it's like, I could cast a smite, which is like a d6 shots 5/1/1 or something for 1 psychic level, or I could like pull in all the psychic power and shoot a warp lance And that takes my whole turn, but I get this Psyker ability that's huge. And the fact that you are potentially losing access to other abilities in order to make these psychic attacks means that the psychic attacks can be really powerful. I love that. I think that's sick. And if you like extrapolate that out to like other factions, you know, Thousand Suns, you could see being like, whoa, this is crazy. Suddenly the Thousand Suns entire mechanic could be around these like kind of Psyker levels. I love that. I think that's awesome. What I don't like is that if this is a mechanic that exists, of course, we don't for sure know. If this is a mechanic, and if it gets added to other factions, if it's not just an orc thing to represent the fact that like orc psychers are just fucking weirdos. What I don't like is that this wasn't a thing on release, and that if this is how they will manage psychers in the future, we're gonna see this delayed release format where some factions are not gonna get these mechanics for ages, and they may not be able to interact with this whole mechanic, which I think is an issue. And what I would have preferred to see is like a sort of index version of these mechanics that they just release on at the you know, all at the same time, and then we don't have this thing where some factions are playing with or without it. There was, of course, I think apocryphally in 8th edition, that was when they rolled out the concept of stratagems, and for the longest time, if you were an index faction in 8th edition, you didn't have stratagems, so you could just be playing, and your opponent's like, all right, I'm gonna do +1 AP, +1 to hit, and then double shoot these guys, and they're just wiping you out. And you're like, I will do a command reroll, thank you. And you reroll one of your saves. And it was just like the imbalance was fucking insane. We had a similar thing in 9th edition when they rolled out factions objectives, where you could choose, basically, instead of choosing fixed objectives, one of your fixed objectives could be a faction one that was specific to your faction, but only the codexes that had those in their codex could choose them. So you would have some factions that would be like, I will do assassination, and then the other person's like, all right, I'm going to choose a stronghold to defend every turn that I control this objective, and I have more, and I destroy an enemy unit with the unit that's on that objective, I gain 5 points. And you're like, cool, well, I have assassination, so where are your characters? And it's like, this feels like it might be that situation again, where like some factions may have this totally redesigned psychic system, and some factions are like, I will choose to overcharge my smite. It now becomes hazardous. I have taken immortal wounds. Sick, dude. Whereas these guys are like, I will choose to burn 3 psychic levels to supercharge my head bursta. Ba-boom! And you're like, man, I wish I could do that. So I hope that's not the case. If it is the case, well, I'm of mixed feelings, because I hope it is the case, because as a mechanic, it's cool and it offers a lot of interesting options. However, if it's orc only, then it's whatever, and if it's not orc only, then we're gonna see a lot of factions that won't get access to them, and that's sad. So we'll see. In 9th edition, you didn't have a command phase into your codex. That's almost how it worked. Yeah. It's like a lot of armies were just like, in your command phase, choose to like use all your abilities. And then 8th edition was like, I don't know. Here's a strat. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll get a psychic index. Maybe. That'd be cool. A psychic redux, if this is in fact a mechanic, would be sweet. I almost feel like it does have such interesting potential as a mechanic. It almost feel like it's fake. I almost feel like that kind of makes it less likely to be real. But I will give Games Workshop credit. If someone had told me 2 years ago that we would be playing with asymmetric missions, with player controlled mission selections, I would have told you to kick rocks. I would have been like, no way Games Workshop does that. And they're moving progressively into the 21st century as game designers. And so maybe a extremely basic resource mechanic is not out of their wheelhouse. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. Worst case scenario, this is like an orc only thing. Best case scenario, in 2 years when everyone has psychic armies, We're going to get 6 months of having the coolest game ever where everyone's like, has this very interesting interactive psychic phase, or not even phase, right? Just like psychic abilities. And then a new edition comes out and they axe all the codexes. and they bring back the old psychic phase. That's what's going to happen. Codex reveals later this week. Well, I'm sure we'll find out then. What is this? Some kind of psychic awakening? Have you heard of the Cicatrix Maledictum? Incredible. Anyway, chat. I think that's going to be it for me today. I am going to be live on Twitch. I'll take a quick break here, and then I think I'll go live on Twitch. Will probably be kind of a short stream today, but I do want to go through some of the hilarity that is this insane story of people fighting at the international team tournament. That's fucking so funny. Please come hang out with me on Twitch. I would say probably 30 minutes or so for me to get ready for that, and then we'll go do that. So if my robot wants to tell you about Twitch, there it is. Come hang out with me over there. That's going to be a little bit more low key. With that, chat, I'm going to hop off. Thanks everyone for watching. Summer Slaughters this weekend. I'm going to be leaving on Friday to go set up for that event. It's an 80-player GT. Last year, I think they broke like 28 or 30 or something. It was like 32 and it sold out. And then they cut down to like 26 or something because it was like the fucking Death Guard meta and no one wanted to play. And this year, I think they sold out and they have like a huge wait list. So I'm so psyched. Their event tripled in size over the course of a year. I'm excited to go down. We're gonna do the full shebang. No more of this like travel case, little tiny baby stream. We're gonna have recorded games. I'm gonna have both tables online. It's gonna be the full loadout. So please come hang out with me for that. That's gonna be Saturday and Sunday, starting at 9 a.m. US Eastern Time on Saturday. And I'm gonna get you over to that live stream in a moment there. So very excited for that event. Wicked Dicey always puts on a good show, so I think it's gonna be great. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you over on Twitch. Keep it classy, folks. Have a good one.